One catchphrase in real estate that we have heard a lot over the past few years has been inventory shortage. And while that might be temporarily true, it should come with an asterisk at the end saying for now, because we do have an inventory shortage right now, but it won't be forever. And I have proof to share with you guys to show you that we're going to see a lot of inventory come over the next 12 years. And it's going to come exactly from the source that you probably think I'm going to say. It's going to come from old people that no longer are with us, that need to get rid of the house, guys, or they age out of the house, whatever happens. Now, I've had people write me saying, oh, what, Michael, you just want all of us to die and leave the houses? Like, no, that's not what I'm saying. I'm just saying that that's the natural order of things. People die. The real estate gets passed on. Either it gets sold or inherited, and 70% of inherited houses get sold anyway. So most of the houses older people live in today will be sold in the next 12 years. So here's what I mean. The short supply of homes has basically been what has caused this whole run-up in the housing market. All these crazy bidding wars and all of this overpaying for houses and waiving inspections is all because we just didn't have enough homes for sale at a time in history when a lot of people had the ability to go and buy one. So the supply didn't meet demand, and therefore the prices skyrocketed. Now, part of it is the fact that a lot of people do have low mortgage rates right now. That is absolutely true, and they don't want to sell those properties, and people who would otherwise be sellers are not selling because of that. Nobody wants to pay more for a smaller house at a higher mortgage rate, you know? So that's kind of the thing that keeps a lot of people in their homes. You also have home builders focusing right now on building new supply, which is definitely helping out with the housing shortage tremendously. I mean, there's been a big boom in construction over the past couple of years. I think one of the biggest ones we've ever had in US history, in fact. And that's why you're seeing so many new homes sell so well, guys. And you know, the funny thing is we can kind of look at the new home market as a teaser of what's going to come with the existing home market. Here we have a house for sale for almost $2.6 million, and man oh man did they overshoot the market. They listed back in August of 2023 for $3.3 million. Now they're down to $2.6. For anybody who's counting, that's a $700,000 price cut, 21% off, folks, and the house is still not selling. I'm sure they're not very happy with their realtor at this point. I know I wouldn't be. Property tax bill here is only $14,000 a year. I know that sounds expensive, but that's not too bad for a house this expensive because they bought it back in the year 2000 for only $560,000. Because the inventory levels on the brand new home market are already pushing it into a buyer's market. There's about 9 months of supply on the new home market, and new home prices have dropped over 18% since the peak of the housing market back in June of 2022. So that's a substantial fall in prices. And so that just goes to show you what can happen when the inventory even gets slightly pushed into a buyer's market, because a balanced market is considered 6 months worth of inventory. It's not a seller's market, it's not a buyer's market. Anything less is a seller's market, anything more is a buyer's market. So 9 months is a buyer's market by 3 months, and it has crushed prices for brand new houses. Now you can still say, well, it's still too expensive, Michael, even though the prices have come down, and that's fair. But builders are accommodating that too, because now they're starting to build smaller houses. Where really most of the inventory is going to come from the existing home market in the next couple of decades is going to be from the silver tsunami, which is basically just a way of saying, you know, old people are going to be selling their houses, whether it's because they have to or because they die. When we take a look at this chart here, this shows you by year, or starting last year, how many homes are going to start hitting the market that fit into this category, okay? And you guys can see that just move up a couple years. It's 2024, move up to 2026, guys. That's already 1.5 million houses in addition to the market that we have right now. So right now, we're recovering back towards pre-pandemic levels of inventory, but we're not there yet because we have about 1.3 million homes on the market for sale. Pre-pandemic and a lot of normal years, it was around the 2.3 million mark. So we're still about 1 million homes short, hence this whole inventory shortage that keeps getting perpetuated. However, with this chart, you can see that if these demographics are correct, then by 2026 there will no longer be an inventory shortage at all, even if home builders stop building today, because of how many listings are going to continue hitting the market. Because you got to remember, this graph only shows you the amount of old people that are going to sell their homes. This has nothing to do with, you know, regular couples that are moving up to a different house or moving for a job or anything like that, the normal listings that hit the market no matter what. And as you can see, as the years go by, it just gets more and more pronounced, you know. By the year 2030, we're talking 4.2 million additional listings. And then all the way up through 2035, you got 9.2 million additional listings that are gonna hit the market from people that need to sell houses, guys. So this whole inventory shortage that we keep hearing about is not going to last forever. And it's one of my strongest arguments right now of why people shouldn't be desperate to buy, especially if you live in an area where the rent is so much cheaper. Like here in Miami is a good example of that right now. It wasn't the case for a long time, but now it is. And it just doesn't really make sense to buy right now at these prices and rates, plus all of the insurance increases we're getting here. It's really hard to make an argument for it. And then some people will say, well, Michael, you know, you can say a lot of those houses are going to get inherited by their family. People will say, you know, BlackRock and all of the big investment firms are going to come in and buy up all those houses. And none of that stuff's actually true, guys, because while a lot of those houses will get inherited, the data shows that about 70% of homes that are inherited get sold very fast because people can't afford to keep the house, okay, or they don't want the house and they just want the money. Those are basically the only two reasons. So majority of the time, people sell the inherited house. So they will hit the market at some point. The big investment firms, they're only gonna buy properties that are in an area and a price range that meets their goals, okay? And that's usually on the lower end of the market from what we've seen so far. And another argument I keep hearing recently is that, well, you just don't understand that, you know, they printed all this money and all of that money flowed into asset prices, and that's why they have ballooned to where they are now, and they're just going to stay that way because of all the money that was printed. And while I'm not going to sit here and say that that's not possible or that's not true, because it is true, that is what happened, I don't necessarily believe that's where things are going to remain indefinitely, because everybody knows that real estate is a game of supply and demand, guys. So regardless of how much money was pumped into the housing market over the past couple of years, it's not really going to matter if we have 4 million houses for sale on the US housing market at any given point, okay? That's not going to matter anymore because the supply will outpace the demand at that point, and therefore prices will come down, because that's just how economics work. And it seems to be the direction things are headed in here. And if you're a baby boomer, somebody in the older generation, be sure to leave a comment. Let us know what you're gonna do with your house. Are you gonna sell it while you're still alive? Or are you gonna pass it down to the next generation? What are you gonna do? Let us know. In fact, maybe I should put up a poll on my channel. I'm just worried about people voting on that are not actually old enough to vote, so to speak. But you know what, guys? A lot of home buyers, you know, I think it's up to 80 or 90% of home buyers that bought a home in the past few years have some level of buyer's remorse about at least some part of the transaction, whether it's the fact that they overpaid, whether it's the fact that the house is too small, or maybe it's not in the location they were hoping for, or the school district they wanted, or the neighborhood is bad. They didn't realize all this stuff ahead of time, or how expensive the homeowner's insurance and taxes have been, or the repairs. Like, the list goes on of why people have buyer's remorse recently. And this can be a huge reason to have buyer's remorse, I believe. Like, let me just paint you a scenario here where I think it makes a lot of sense to rent. Say you live in an area where you're paying $2,000 a month for rent right now, but in order to buy a similar house to what you're renting would cost you $4,000 a month, which is probably what most people are facing right now. That's probably a pretty typical scenario across the country. So you're looking at double, which means if you can actually afford to buy, but you're choosing to rent, then you're saving $2,000 a month by renting, right? So that's an extra $24,000 a year that can be invested into any asset of your choosing, can be saved right now in high yield savings, earning a decent return every year and compounding year after year. And then let's just fast forward to 2030, right? That's only 6 years from now. That's not that far into the future. Then you have an additional 4.2 million listings for sale on the housing market, which has greatly increased the supply of homes for sale. And even if prices stayed the same, let's say that home prices don't go down magically, right? Because the demand is so high that people are still buying these houses, even though they're coming out for sale more and more, and prices kind of just stay flat for the next 6 years, which is a possibility. Anything's possible, right? So you saved all this money, you compounded all that interest, invested that money. That's going to probably pay for half of your house in cash by the time that 6 years comes. And at the very least, the worst thing that's going to happen is A, you're going to have a lot of money saved, and B, you're going to have way more choices of homes for sale than you have right now. That's the worst case scenario, okay? Best case scenario, you still have a ton of money saved, and home prices do come down substantially, and you have way more homes to look at. So either way, it works in your favor to kind of wait this out, I believe. And that is assuming that this is going to happen, guys. But there's really no way it can't happen, because people can't take homes with them when they die, right? This house here is still going to be here after the person that owns it passes away. That's just reality. So somebody's going to come in here and buy this house at some point after that. Correct me if I'm wrong. Homes don't just stay vacant after someone doesn't live there anymore forever. So I think it's very beneficial for people to kind of wait this out, if you have the time to wait, that is. You know, not everybody's gonna have the time or the patience, or say you just have a lot of money, you have the money to burn, and you just don't want to rent. Knock yourself out. I never tell anybody not to do something that they prefer to do. I'm just making the case that in the future, there's going to be a lot more housing inventory to choose from, and it's most likely going to have an impact on home prices. And that's not even talking about anything with the economy, anything with a major recession or job losses or unemployment that can be thrown into the mix, guys. All we're talking about here is old people selling homes. That's it. And that's going to be enough to make a pretty big dent in the housing inventory over the next couple of decades. So just remember that, because you don't want to end up with buyer's remorse, okay? Let me just give you a quick buyer's remorse story here. There was this girl, she was living rent-free with her parents to save enough money to buy a house, which a lot of people are doing right now, so it's a good buyer's remorse story. She bought in June of 2022. I mean, timing couldn't be worse. I mean, that was literally the peak of the housing market. Okay, but you know, people don't know. They have the house, and their mortgage payment is $3,400 a month, and on top of that, they have an 8-month-old son, and they're paying for a bigger car, and they're putting money away in a 529 college savings plan. So she says that it feels like we're going to be swallowed by that forever. When they asked her if this is the American dream that she was hoping for, she said, "My husband and I spend a lot of time stressed trying to make ends meet. They're trying to give their son as much as they can while he grows up, and even swim lessons are expensive," she's saying. They're trying to cut back right now on going to Target and trips to Starbucks and things that they don't really need anymore. They're not bringing the kid to daycare either. They're hiring a nanny they found on Facebook instead. I'm not sure how reliable that is. But they say, basically, my husband and I fear we may never be able to have a second child, not because we can't conceive, but because we can't afford one. Well, if people did what I'm telling you to do right now, then that might not be the case, guys, you know? I can't understand someone's mentality of who's going to go and buy a house when it costs double what their rent payment is. I totally get it if the price is much closer. If you're paying, you know, $3,700 a month in rent right now, and to buy that house would be $3,800 or $3,900 a month, yeah, go for it, you know. It probably makes sense. Even though it's a little more expensive, you're going to get the equity advantage that's going to outweigh that $200 extra a month. I think a lot of people just misunderstand me sometimes. They see my videos and they think I'm against people buying real estate, which couldn't be further from the truth. I sold real estate for a solid 14 years to people, and I own real estate myself. I do think real estate is a good thing that people should own. But you have to be careful, because people hear things like this and automatically assume all of it to be true. They hear things like homeowners have 38 times more wealth than renters. And that could be true in some cases. In other cases, might not be true at all. You could have renters that are super rich because they invested all that savings into the stock market, into investment properties. You know, that's what I did, guys. Like my wife and I, we bought 2 investment properties before we ever bought our primary residence. You know why? Because the rent was so cheap. It didn't make sense to buy our primary residence. And instead, we made money on those properties. So we increased our income even further by renting. Now, I'm not gonna lie, if you owned a home before this run up in the housing market, you are a lot wealthier now, just by default. That is absolutely true. There's no denying that. And the longer you've owned your home, the more equity you have at this point. But here's where people start to go wrong, guys. You hear things like this, that homeowners have all the wealth right now and are much wealthier than renters, but then people start buying into bad financial habits because they're a homeowner, right? They do things that they see other people do, that they saw their parents do. Like we've all learned some bad financial habits from our parents, right? Well, this is kind of one of them. It's one of those things that people have seen other people do and like it's just normal. And that is this: if you are a homeowner, that wealth can be tapped to improve their homes, pay for college, or start a business. So basically, they want to make it commonplace for people to borrow money against their homes, which I always think is a terrible idea. I don't think anybody should do this. So a lot of people learn from watching others do it that this is just normal and it's what you do. And once you own a house and it goes up enough in value, you can start borrowing against it to pay for other things in your life. And this is one of the biggest financial mistakes I think a lot of people end up making because they either don't know any better or they start living beyond their means and use the house as a piggy bank. And when you see, you know, your parents or grandparents that made these same mistakes, you know, just because you see them gamble or play the lottery, or you know, they borrow against their house in order to pay the bills, and you see them do this and think, oh, that's normal. That's just what you do when you're an adult. And that couldn't be further from the truth. That's what financially uneducated people do, and broke people do it. Not rich people don't do this, guys. Rich people, if they borrow against their home, you can guarantee they're using that money to buy another asset. That's the only reason they're gonna do it. And I think this also could be another source of future inventory on the market. Now that we're starting to see home price growth slow down, at least, like it's starting to remain flat, go down in other areas, and the places it is still going up, it's not going up by huge double-digit increases like we saw over the past few years. So it's slowing down tremendously. And as it does, you're gonna see a lot of these people that thought it was a good idea to borrow against the home start to lose the house because the payments are gonna get out of control, right? They either have a second mortgage or a HELOC or a home equity loan on top of the regular mortgage, on top of the increasing expenses to maintain the house, property taxes and insurance, increasing cost of life, kids, it all adds up. And if their incomes are not increasing substantially enough to pay for all this stuff, a lot of these people are going to be forced to sell the house, especially when we hit a recession. And I think it's actually stories like this that kind of give people the FOMO into buying a home today, because a lot of people are worried that if they don't do it, that, you know, they're going to end up like never going to be able to afford a home, and you're going to miss out on this huge run up in the housing market. Well, newsflash, you already missed out. If you're not already a homeowner, you already missed out. So now, to me, the smartest thing to do is to do what you can by controlling your expenses, you know? Save the extra difference, guys. If you can save $2,000 a month renting, do it. Save and invest that money. I will say in some markets it's tricky. Like for example, I have my eye on Palm Coast, Florida. Like if I were probably to move somewhere else, I would probably move there right now because it's way more laid back than Miami. It is way cheaper. You don't really have traffic, and it gets cooler at nighttime. Those are all things I love about it. But actually, the cost to rent a home there is pretty much on par with what it would cost to buy. And the conundrum is that home prices have been falling in the area and inventory's been building. So if I was saying I wanted to move there today, buying would probably be a pretty big mistake because there's a good probability the home prices there are going to continue going down over the next several years as inventory continues to build. At the same time, it's hard to justify renting because the cost to rent is basically on par with owning. So it's like a catch-22 situation, damned if you do, damned if you don't. And honestly, guys, if you're faced with this kind of situation, that's probably the toughest buy or rent situation when the price is the same and not knowing what's going to happen to the future of the market. But if you track your market and you can reasonably bet that prices are going to go down, say they're already going down, like a market like that, I would put my money on that it's going to continue to go down, most likely. And it might make sense to just rent for a couple more years and wait it out, get the home at a better price, and you're going to have a lot more inventory to choose from too. And already there's a ton of inventory to choose from up there. In fact, I'm going to go up there for my wife's birthday in April. And we're going to spend like a week up there, and I'll be shooting some videos up there and showing you guys some of that too. Now, one of my subscribers sent me this screenshot. I don't know who it was. I'm sorry, I forgot who sent this to me because I just get so many things, but I kept it, and I'm finally wanting to put this in one of my videos. It's basically an announcement letter from an HOA. I have no idea where it's at. It doesn't say where this HOA is. It's from last June, talking about all the problems that they have there, guys. And I'm not going to go over all the problems they have. You can pause the video and read this whole thing if you want to. But check out a couple of highlights here. First of all, because of the special assessments and how much the costs have gone up for the HOA fees in this neighborhood, they're saying that the home values have dropped anywhere between $40,000 to $50,000 because buyers are having trouble qualifying for mortgages when the fee is this high. Some contracts have been canceled due to high fees. Showings are fewer when potential buyers see higher fees compared to other communities, which is also a big mistake from buyers too, because just because you're looking at a lower fee complex or building, whatever you're looking at, doesn't mean those fees are going to remain low. There's actually a pretty high probability those fees are going to go up, by the way. Also, they have problems there with some of the buildings themselves, okay? They say about 92% of the second stories have issues, not only with the exterior, but 2 feet into the building. 14 buildings will be revisited to check for issues discovered in later units. 19 buildings are completed so far. Also, they go on to say that they don't have enough money to pay the bills. They're going to have a special assessment of $10,000 per unit starting in October 1st. So that was October last year, and they came out with this letter in July. So they gave people a few months heads up. That's about it. But the part of this I really wanted to get to, because a lot of people say, oh, you know, owning a home is always so much better. Your net worth is higher, blah, 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 blah. Well, look at this, guys. These are the suggestions that the HOA board is giving to people that cannot afford these special assessments. And $10,000 is not a huge special assessment, by the way, either. Here in Miami, there have been buildings and condos where people have gotten slapped with $100,000 special assessments. So $10,000 is a drop in the bucket for a special assessment, FYI. But here's their suggestion on how you should pay for this. I love this. Watch this. Pay in full. Okay, yeah, no big deal. Pay in full. Apply for a 0% interest credit card for 18 to 21 months. Get a personal loan. Take out a home equity line of credit to tap into the equity of your home. Get a new equity loan to tap into equity for one lump sum. Borrow against your 401k. Verify loss assessment coverage to your homeowner's insurance. Sell the home. Go into foreclosure. And for seniors, you can always do a reverse mortgage. Oh man, you have to love that advice, right? Basically all the wrong things to do, right? Now, I understand why they're telling people to do this, because it's probably the only way most people can pay for this, and those are their only options, right? But the problem is they're all bad ideas. And it's not what you do if you're in good financial shape. If you are in good financial shape, you're probably going to do the first option, which is pay in full. Or if the interest rate's low enough and they give you a payment plan, you can just pay it like that and not have to pay it in full if you wish. But this letter highlights the struggles that people are having in the homeowner community right now, guys. If people cannot afford a $10,000 expense as a homeowner, you probably really can't afford to be a homeowner. That's something you have to get realistic about with yourself and say, can I afford that extra $10,000 expense that might come up? In this case, it's a special assessment, but even if you own a house that's not in an HOA community, you can have some other type of major expense come up that you have to pay for. And a lot of people are going to reach for one of these financial tools in order to pay for it, meaning that they don't actually have the money themselves to pay for it. And if that's the case, you probably can't afford to be a homeowner. It's just reality. I mean, I feel sorry for these people that are gonna have to sell their homes or go into foreclosure or take out a HELOC to pay for these special assessments, because those are just all terrible things to happen to people. But I think you're gonna continue to see more and more things like this happen as our economy gets worse and worse, guys, because things are slowing down. The Fed knows it, the government knows it. It's gonna be artificially, juiced along for this election year. But after that, it's fair game. Who knows how bad it's going to get and how fast or what's going to happen afterwards. And for anybody who missed yesterday's video, make sure to go check that out, because I offer some solutions at the end of the video to make sure you're in a good spot financially before the you-know-what hits the fan. So if you enjoyed this video, make sure you subscribe to the channel. And if you don't want to wait for my next video to come out, check out this one on the screen right over here, and I'll see you in the next one.